So all pharmaceutical products are manufactured in lots of batches. The lots are numbered. You can look at, if you go to the pharmacy and buy Advil, you can look on the box, it has a lot number. So those are the lot numbers that can be recorded in various reports when people submit their reports. And they're not always there because people who are submitting the reports, which is either patients, their relatives, pharmacists or doctors, healthcare professionals or nurses, they don't always have that information. So you may not remember what was the batch number you were injected with. You don't have your card with you, or the physician doesn't know. So, but in about 50% of the reports, those numbers are there. And so I was able to match those lot numbers with CDC lot numbers. I have a list of them. And I was able to see that not only the adverse events were high, but the variability of them by batch was extreme, absolutely extreme.
Explain that to me, the variability among them. Yeah.
So the variability meaning how many total reports are submitted for a particular batch number. So some batch numbers had 2 or 3 reports, and some had 5,000, 6,000. That should never happen. You should never. If you think about it, if you're buying, Advil today, your experience, if you're buying it today and you're buying it a month from now, your experience a month from now shouldn't be 1,000% different, because that's really dangerous. Even if you think Advil is safe medication or aspirin is safe medication, or even if you're buying orange juice, and your experience today and a week from now, 1,000 times or 1,000% different. That's going to be very dangerous. One of those instances is very dangerous. So when you see a variability like this between batches of what is supposed to be consistently produced, good manufacturing practice compliant product, it means the product is not good manufacturing practice compliant. And I, as a comparator, because I didn't have a baseline for this and I didn't have information, for example, of the batch sizes at the time, I do now, and the story doesn't change. But at the time I didn't, so I thought I should compare it to something known, and something known was flu vaccines. So I extracted all the data for flu vaccines from VAERS, and I looked how flu vaccine data looks batch to batch over a long period of time. And by the way, it's much more much more variety of producers making different size of batches. There are dozens of manufacturers of flu vaccines historically, and different sizes of batches. And for flu vaccines, it looks as expected for good manufacturing practice compliant product, which is straight line, very close to zero. All the batches line up, and just very, very little variability, just a tiny bit. And then when you compare them to these COVID shots, that you can't even put them on the same graph. Flu vaccine data disappears because the COVID shots variability is huge, absolutely huge, enormous. So I knew at that time, which was toward middle 2021, toward fall of 2021, I knew for sure they were not good manufacturing practice compliant. So we have not good manufacturing practice compliant product being produced, shipped in millions of doses, injected in millions of people, including pregnant women and children. We have CDC and FDA lying and saying there is no signal at all. And this continues for a long time. And then eventually, I ran across research by my now collaborator, Catherine Watt. She's done an incredible legal analysis of how the government and the healthcare agencies what set of laws they're utilizing to enable this, to enable to subvert the good manufacturing practice compliance laws and be able to continue denying that there is any injury or any death or any problem occurring with these products for a long time, and this continues to date. What we found is the whole representation of what is happening is a lie. It's basically the U.S. government is representing to the public that this is a health event and a response to a health event. But in fact, what they are doing is this is a military operation. These so-called vaccines, they're not really vaccines, but these injections are being manufactured under defense contracts, utilizing Defense Production Act, other transaction authority and emergency use authorization under public health emergency. So when these things are used together, then good manufacturing practices do not apply to these products at all.
Even legally?
Even legally, yeah.
Right.
So there's this law on the books, 21 USC 360 BBB, that says emergency use authorized countermeasures under public health emergency cannot constitute clinical investigation. So clinical investigation is actually not possible for these countermeasures. And if clinical investigation is not possible, then you cannot have clinical trials, you cannot have informed consent, you cannot have clinical trial subjects or clinical trial investigators. So utilizing the structure of Emergency Use Authorization, Public Health Emergency, Other Transaction Authority, Defense Production Act, the government was able to commandeer pharmaceutical companies to produce these non-compliant injectable products and distribute them, calling them a medicine, where in fact it's not a medicine. It's an act of war. They're using Defense Production Act, machinery, United States military. Even internationally, this is being distributed from this military to overseas militaries, not pharmaceutical distribution chain. So they're using the military machinery to distribute these non-compliant products, including biologicals, chemicals, all kinds of ingredients we don't really understand very well, and call it public health and medicine.
So first of all, this sounds so fantastical, what you just said, right? What, really? That's crazy. Now, one thing I know for sure is not crazy, which is the fact that it's the military that did the distribution. That's official. That's actually that's public knowledge. That was announced. I know people who are responsible for the distribution, and they're very proud of doing the distribution because they felt it was the only, I guess, structure in society that's able to deploy something like this fast enough, right? And I have that on record. Now, but what about these other parts? Like that this is actually the U.S. government contracting these pharma companies to develop a countermeasure against what?
Well, so the countermeasure is a very important legal term. So, and I advise people to look it up. So the countermeasure, it's a very fuzzy term, first of all. So anything can be a countermeasure. A lock on the door is a countermeasure against a break-in. So calling something a countermeasure, you already remove precision of the legal definitions of a pharmaceutical, for example. So, but we know already it's not a pharmaceutical. Also, what I'm saying, I'm not. It's not a conspiracy. Definitely not, because the law that I just described, this 21 USC 360 BBB, it's cited by everyone, including the FDA in their documents, including by the manufacturers in their documents, by GAO reports that discuss this. Recently, as you may know, Brooke Jackson's False Claims Act case was dismissed. The judge, you can read the dismissal of this case. The judge agrees with what I just said. He agreed with the fact that Pfizer wasn't supposed to be compliant with good manufacturing practices per contract with the Department of Defense, that they were producing countermeasures, that they were producing large-scale manufacturing demonstration, which is how these things were ordered from the government. He essentially describes this in more sophisticated 100-page document.
Based on a contract.
Based on the contract
Right.
that Pfizer produced.
Right.
Pfizer produced their DoD contract, and since then, hundreds of Department of Defense contracts for COVID countermeasures were released through FOIA, although they're partially redacted. But I read a lot of them, and they're all online. I read the Pfizer, Moderna ones and some other vaccines, and they're all essentially similar. They're utilizing the structure of ordering countermeasures, ordering prototypes, Department of Defense ordering it, from the pharmaceutical manufacturers under Defense Production Act, under Other Transaction Authority. And the good manufacturing practices are not part of it at all. So this product, by statute and by contract with Department of Defense, does not need to be compliant with good manufacturing practices.